The boys of summer will soon hit the field. The Blue Jays summer training camp kicks off in Toronto this weekend. Ottawa gave the team special permission to return from training camp in Florida, while the border is still restricted due to the pandemic. Ottawa must still decide if Toronto will be allowed to host home games during the regular season. Jordan Horobin is a freelance sports reporter joining us from Toronto. Jordan, thanks so much for making time for us today.
Yeah, thanks. It's a pleasure of mine to be here with you.
Jordan, is it a good idea for the Blue Jays to come home and start training here, considering that we're in the midst of a pandemic?
Yeah, it's a loaded question for sure. I think given that Major League Baseball is certainly trying its best to make a season happen, you can look at Toronto as being arguably a safer place for the Blue Jays to train compared to Dunedin, Florida, their spring training complex, where certainly Florida, we know cases continue to surge there, lots of new records being set still. So I think from that standpoint, it does make sense for them to try to make this work in Toronto. But, whether or not they'll be able to play their regular season games there is another question.
Okay, so help me understand how exactly they're going to train. Where are they going to be? Who can they interact with? How do we make sure they're safe, or how is the team making sure they're safe and that the public is safe?
Right. So basically the team will be sort of quarantined to the Rogers Center campus, so to speak. So they'll be, once they leave, they're all gathering in Dunedin, Florida right now, and they're expected to arrive in Toronto at some point over the weekend. And then when they get here on chartered flights, they'll take chartered buses directly to Rogers Center. They'll be staying in the hotel attached to the ballpark and have direct access to the ballpark from their rooms. It'll certainly be a separate portion of the hotel than where other people might be staying. And they have to just stay there for the portion of the preseason training. They'll be working out on the field. There's plenty of mounds and plenty of space on the field for people to hit and throw. And they'll just have to do that for the time being. What they're in the wait and see mode now for is what's going to happen for the regular season.
But what about when they're not practicing? I think that's a concern for a lot of people, that
Right.
These are young guys. It's summer in Toronto. You know how short-lived that pleasure is. So won't these guys want to go out to restaurants and hang out? Meanwhile, they've been in the States now. A lot of them have been in the States. Now they're coming here. What is the franchise doing to make sure that this doesn't become a bigger issue?
Yeah. So before they arrive in Toronto, all players and personnel have to they have to have two negative COVID-19 tests before getting on that chartered flight. And then once they're here, like you said, sort of the short-lived but enjoyable summers of Toronto, they're unfortunately not going to get much of that from a food standpoint. They'll have contactless food delivery. Their check-in and check-out of the hotel will also be contactless. But as far as it's been communicated to reporters, the team has to basically stay at the hotel and the Rogers Center ballpark and not really wander elsewhere from there.
Jordan, to the best of your knowledge, did any of the players resist this? Were they worried? Have any of them expressed concerns about this move?
As far as reporters have been made aware, the understanding is that players are fully behind this and they're accepting of sort of the terms of the agreement here, because I think they see the value of trying to make this happen in Toronto. The difference between playing in Toronto versus playing in Dunedin is, pretty broad in terms of the robust amenities that the Major League ballpark would have. The lavishness of the clubhouse and just the field in general. Just it's a higher quality place to play. No disrespect to Dunedin there in TD Ballpark, but Rogers Center does have them beat in that regard. So I think players just understand that if they want to try to make this work and be able to play in a Major League ballpark this season, they're going to have to give a little bit on their end.
Now, the border is still restricted between the United States and Canada for regular travel, but that's brought up concerns for people that why are professional athletes getting special treatment? What do you make of that criticism?
Yeah, it's a totally fair criticism. I think we know that professional sports are a huge driver of the economy, and so that's probably the easiest argument that I could make for it. But there are, very much more question marks to ask of, the access to testing and how much more frequently athletes will be able to be tested than maybe the average person. So I think really it does come back to the dollar and, Major League Baseball being a serious economic driver for our community here in Toronto and certainly for several communities across the United States as well. But it's a tough one to wrestle with for sure.
Well, you're clearly a baseball fan, so do you want things to get back on track to have a season as quickly as possible, or how are you feeling about this whole thing?
I mean, for sure, in a bubble, which I guess is kind of the buzzword these days, I would love for baseball to come back, but I want, everyone that's involved to understand the risks, and for players who have already said that they aren't comfortable playing, or players who maybe still in the future will say that, I think everyone needs to respect their decisions on that front. It's not as easy as whether they want to make millions of dollars or not. They have families to be concerned about and their own personal health to be concerned about. And so I think as long as everyone understands sort of the decision to be made here and can make those decisions for themselves, hopefully we'll have a season. But, we have to be prepared, I guess, for the alternative as well.
Okay, we'll be watching. Jordan, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
Jordan Horobin is a freelance sports reporter, and he joined us from Toronto.